I've been getting this thought come to me, so it's worth sharing if it keeps coming. It's purely speculation, but who knows, maybe it's true. Silver hydroperoxide is a compound, just like salt is a compound, but instead of a chloride acid or a sulfuric acid component to the compound, instead what you've got associating itself with the silver ion is oxygenated water. And there's this methodology to the cells, how they absorb nutrients. They'll take one thing in and something else will come in for the ride. For instance, a cell in the body, let's say a nose cell, will hunger for calcium. And in the course of doing so, in the course of absorbing an ion of calcium, it'll absorb an ion of oxygen. Now the red blood cells work differently. They have iron inside themselves because they have an appetite for iron, and that helps them absorb oxygen. Another example, potassium. A cell gets hungry for potassium. It pulls potassium out of the blood and into itself, and in the course of doing so, it also drags along glucose, which it also happens to require is some sugar. Well, what if the cells do the same thing? They're hungry for water and oxygen, but let's just say water. The most important thing they need to hydrate. And if there's silver hydroperoxide in the bloodstream, in the lymphatic system, whatever, in the interstitial spaces between the cells, they go and they look and see, oh, there's some water available. I need that. I'm thirsty. And in the course of bringing it into themselves, they bring in oxygenated water, not just mere water alone, and silver, something they normally wouldn't want to draw into themselves because it's a heavy metal. Why would they want that? They want something lighter like sodium, Why would they want, or magnesium, why would they want silver? It'll do them good. It'll help them regenerate. So silver hydroperoxide, the hydroperoxide component of silver hydroperoxide, is very crucial to this, to making silver bioavailable, to make it attractive and desirable from the standpoint of the little bitty tiny cell inside our body, all the cells. They want water. They're not going to go for the oxygen because normally they'd go for calcium to get the oxygen, see? But they're going to get the oxygen anyway just by wanting the water. And they're going to get the silver too because a cell has to maintain balance. Now, with ions floating around, obviously it doesn't have to take the silver in. Just because it took in the hydroperoxide component of silver hydroperoxide, the two ions floating around, it could just as easily grab sodium if it wants that instead. But the fact is it'll have to grab something that's a base. And so long as the silver stays solvent, it will be a base. And so it'll be up to the cell to decide what it wants to take in. Do I want sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, iron, silver? Do I want it? But we make it available, and we let the cell decide in its infinite wisdom what it feels is right for it. The customer knows best, right? The cell is the customer. But if we don't provide for that customer, they are our customers, right? They keep us alive. Then they got very limited resources to work with, and it's our fault. So we can't it's best not to force them to do what we want them to do. It's best to encourage, and providing resources is the easiest, best way to do that, and let the cell decide. If the cell's cuckoo, then, that's different. But the cell is smart, usually, and makes the best decisions based on available resources. And we want to make sure we give it the best nutrition available, And silver, ionic silver, is the best nutrition available. But how can we convince the cell that if there's no hydroperoxide available, oxygenated water available? To convince the cell to think more intelligently. Oxygen is a boost, and water is a boost. Oxygenated water is a tremendous boost. And the cell will make better decisions. So the cell is still free to make its decisions, but it will make better ones based on a better standing, a better footing upon which it stands. And that's because it'll have oxygenated water to absorb and give it a lift. It's just like if we put an oxygen mask over and took a whiff of pure oxygen. Wow, we'd get smarter all of a sudden. That's why, and it kills pain, as I recall. That's why, who's that? Michael Jackson slept in a hyperbaric chamber, because he wanted to be free of pain. So that's why, is that why silver kills pain? Because it encourages the formation of hydroperoxide, if it should happen to go into solution by some means or another, become ionic? This is a very interesting question. Obviously, I don't know the answer to it, but you just flip it around and begin to wonder if silver ions can promote the production of hydroperoxide from water with dissolved oxygen in there, and then help the two unite and bind with each other and create hydroperoxide to balance out the silver if it should perchance want to be in solution. An electric charge would want to put silver in solution, I would imagine. So these are questions I don't have the answers to, obviously. I'm thinking using backwards logic, an attempt to use reverse engineering style thinking to come up with a rationale. But because I want to take things and flip them over and see them from the opposite standpoint. So I don't know. But at least this is a good rationale for associating why would a body cell want to take a heavy metal into itself and process it as if it's a nutrient, because it's going to have its wisdom factor, its wisdom IQ upgraded because of the presence of oxygenated water, hydroperoxide, in solution in the fluids of the body, raising the intelligence of the cells to make better decisions.